Spain tried to conquer China? Okay, if you're into history, you already know that this didn't happen, or at least that it didn't succeed. But it could have, and they were planning to do it. Throughout the 16th century, this plan was proposed time after time, and everything was planned down to the very specific details. It gained even more strength from 1580 onwards, when the Spanish king essentially inherited the kingdom of Portugal, whose king had died without a son. An Iberian Union was created, and this gave Spain access to Portuguese domains such as their commercial outposts or feitorias across the coast of Africa, the Arabian Gulf, India, and then in key places like Malacca, not to mention the direct gateway into mainland China, the port of Macau. Plus, not to mention the obvious strong Portuguese fleet at the time, their knowledge of naval and trade routes, and their close connections to a lot of the locals throughout all of these regions, namely in Japan. The invasion would be launched from the Spanish colony of the Philippines. It would advance in phases to take the coastal provinces of Guangdong and Fujian, and then the rest of the coast, marching to Beijing and capturing the Chinese Emperor Wanli, forcing him to submit to Iberian or Spanish rule. The third phase would push into the interior and begin a process of evangelizing and converting the Chinese people to Christianity, or rather Catholicism. A fourth phase would push their domain to all surrounding areas, or at least their influence: Japan, Indochina, Indonesia, but also go the opposite way, pushing west all the way to Central Asia and the frontier with the Ottoman Empire, with whom they were at war with in Europe. This sounds pretty insane, right? At least I think so. Sure, the Spanish Empire was very powerful at the time, the Portuguese were very influential, and the two of them together, I think, could conceive of a naval invasion of South China. Maybe they could even hold some territory there, but all of these other phases, especially the fourth one, seems completely unreachable. And the truth is, it ended up not happening. So in this video, I want to figure out why. First, learning more details about the plan, understanding why the Spanish wanted to do it, and more importantly, why they thought that they could, and then figuring out why it didn't happen. So let's dive a little deep into this story. This is Alonso Sanchez. Well, it's not really him. There's no paintings or, of course, no pictures of how he looked at exactly, but he was a Jesuit priest, and this is how they look like, so it's pretty reasonable to think that he looked something like this. He was born in Spain. He became a priest, and he traveled to the Philippines to convert the locals after the Spanish conquered the territory as a part of their colonial empire. He was part of the Society of Jesus, a religious order of the Catholic Church, commonly known as Jesuits. Which, fun fact, is the name of this incredible pastry that we have in Portugal. I eat it almost every weekend. It's like a triangle, and then you have meringue on top and some egg cream in the middle. But anyway, let's get back to the story. Okay, this is the problem of editing while you're hungry, because now I can't get back to the story. I have to go buy one. So I'm gonna take you with me. Okay, so we got one of them. Part of the cover is fallen off, but you can tell that there's like a meringue cover on the top. And I'm gonna try it in front of you. It's very good. So the origin of the name Jesuit for this is actually pretty interesting, because some people say that it was named just after the shape that it has, because it kind of resembles the cape that the Jesuit priests and missionaries used. Another theory says that it's named after a specific guy, a Spanish cook that moved to Portugal after cooking at a Jesuit monastery, and he would make these traditional pastries, and they became known after the Jesuits name because of that. A third theory says that it was just developed by the Jesuits themselves. We have a lot of, like church, monastery, convent cakes and pastries that were made by members of the clergy, and so this would be one of them. I'm not sure which of these is true. I guess we don't really know, so you can choose whichever you like best. Alonso led a sector of the society who believed that it was the duty of the Spanish Catholic Church to convert the millions of Chinese people to Catholicism. Many other religious orders didn't think it was a good idea, like the Dominicans or the Franciscans, and saw venturing into China a risky endeavor for their priests. Yet several figures of the Habsburg monarchy that ruled Spain found the idea pretty interesting. It was a vast land, rich with resources and trading opportunities. Essentially, they would make a fortune if Spain was successful, and so they backed the Jesuits' plan and began pitching it to the Spanish king. But they weren't the first to do so, and they didn't really come up with this idea. The thought of conquering China and annexing it to the Spanish colonial empire was actually first presented decades earlier in 1526 by the very famous Hernán Cortés, the conqueror of the Aztec Empire and much of Spanish America. After succeeding in America, he had sent a letter to King Charles V, suggesting that they should sail from the Pacific coast of New Spain all the way to Indonesia, starting with the valuable Moluccas, at the time crucial in the spice trade, and then move on to conquer China. King Charles was pretty fascinated with this concept. Essentially, he had just taken over a whole continent, and so the idea of doing that again, understandably, seemed interesting. So he sent an expedition. It was led by Garcia Jofre de Loaiza. Their goal was to sail across the Pacific and colonize the Spice Islands, the Moluccas, on behalf of the Spanish crown, coming all the way from Spain and along the southern American coast. Most of them got lost on the way, and so a second expedition was sent to find them and redo the mission. It was led by Álvaro de Saavedra Cerón. This map shows us their route all the way from the Pacific coast of Mexico to the Philippines over the course of 2 years until the captain died at sea. And like they say, third time is the charm, because a third expedition was then sent, which finally reached part of the goal. This one was led by Miguel López de Legazpi, where his navigator, Andrés de Urdaneta, discovered and mapped a definitive route of travel between the Philippines and New Spain. The main goal was to access the Asian spice trade through here, but many saw this as a first step towards the conquest of China. And again, you can kind of understand their logic here a little bit. I mean, very small contingents of Spanish soldiers were able to take down the gigantic Aztec and Inca empires. They were able to essentially colonize an entire continent. And so when they looked at China, they thought, maybe we could do the same here. I mean, in South and Central America, they very often had help from rival native groups. And so I think the idea was also a little bit to do this in China too. Rally the locals, maybe rally people from Indonesia, from Indochina, from Japan, and with their help, take over China. After arriving in the Philippines, it's no coincidence that Manila was chosen over Cebu as the Spanish colonial capital. It was due to its closeness to Chinese trade routes. Martín de Rada, a missionary and cosmographer, was sent as one of the first Western ambassadors to China in 1569. He was to assess the conditions for an invasion, but his reports weren't great to the cause. He stated that even if China was densely populated, its population was not warlike and depended heavily on their numbers and fortifications for their defense. Hence, it would not be necessary to gather a large Spanish army to subdue them, and any campaign for control should aim to be peaceful and focus instead on missionary work and conversion to Christianity. But hey, speaking of conversions, did you know that there's somebody converting your personal data into their income? This brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Delete Me. Delete Me is an online service that removes your personal data from hundreds of online data brokers. What happens is that your personal information becomes accessible to these data brokers. How? Well, maybe the airline you used got hacked. This actually happened to me. Or maybe you didn't read the small print when signing up somewhere and allowed it to be sold. These data brokers then sell off your data to third parties. At best, you'll receive unwanted spam in your inbox. At worst, you can be looking at something like identity fraud, and we all know that
identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
I don't think I need to explain why this is pretty dangerous, right? I mean, at the very least, it's very annoying to deal with and something that you want to avoid. That is why I trust Delete Me to help me with this. And the best part is that it works automatically for the user. You just submit the info you would like removed from the internet, their experts search for it and request the removal, continuing to scan for it as time goes on. I did it recently and they were able to remove my data from a number of data brokers. And in the best case scenario that your data isn't out there, you get peace of mind by double checking and knowing that nobody's selling your information online. If you want to try it and further protect your personal information online, you can get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/knowledge and use promo code knowledge at checkout. That is joindeleteme.com/knowledge with the code knowledge. And now let's get back to the video. In 1575, following the Battle of Manila against the Chinese pirate Limahong, the Spanish Empire and the Ming Dynasty began to establish diplomatic relations, and Martín de Rada was sent to Fujian as a part of a Spanish delegation with the goal of negotiating permission for a permanent settlement in China, similar to what the Portuguese had with Macau. But that mission ultimately failed, and the Chinese refused to grant the Spanish this privilege. After it, the governor of the Philippines, Francisco de Sande, wrote to King Philip II proposing an invasion of China. He claimed that a force of 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers would be enough, and that the Chinese people oppressed by tyranny would support the campaign. However, in 1577, Philip II rejected the proposal. He judged it ill-timed and instead instructed the governor to pursue friendly relations with the Ming Dynasty. But just 3 years later, something changed. In 1580, the Portuguese king died with no heir, and Philip II of Spain became king of Portugal too. An Iberian Union was created, one which would last until 1640 and grant the Spanish a unique opportunity to try and conquer China again. That guy that we mentioned at the start, the Jesuit missionary, Alonso Sanchez, visited China in 1582 to confirm that the Portuguese of Macau were loyal to their Spanish king. But Sanchez was arrested by Chinese authorities, who were angered by not having been properly informed of the Union and their new trade partners. Upon his return the following year, he became convinced that only military force could ensure the spread of Christianity in China and essentially ensure Spanish control. And this might just be my interpretation of this, but it really seems like there was some type of personal experience, some personal humiliation with being arrested that led to him taking up such a strong position towards the invasion of China. He started to present the theory that the Chinese regime was mistreating Christians, and it was therefore Spain's responsibility to intervene and convert the part of the population that wasn't Catholic. Along with Bishop Domingo de Salazar, he came up with a plan to use the Portuguese outpost in Manila to confiscate Chinese merchant ships and use the network of Portuguese missionaries in Japan to bring in Japanese allies in their attack. He wrote a letter to King Philip stating this and arguing that China was badly defended, with the population prone to revolt against the oppressive regime. He added that 10,000 Iberian soldiers, aided by 2,000 Japanese, would be enough to start the invasion. And this time, Philip seemed to entertain the idea. It seemed appealing to expand his empire by so much land, to access China's rich resources and trade routes, and also potentially form an oriental theater of war in the at the time ongoing Ottoman-Habsburg Wars of Europe. As we saw at the start of the video, the fourth phase involved doing that. So in 1588, he sanctioned the establishment of the official Junta de la Empresa de China, which I guess we could translate as the China Enterprise Board, and plans were made in detail for the conquest of China and future Spanish rule of their land. The number of needed soldiers kept growing, proposal after proposal, which I think gives us a little bit of an idea of how unaware of China's strength Spain really was. This proposal envisioned assembling an armada under the leadership of the governor of the Philippines, consisting of 12,000 Iberian soldiers, 6,000 Visayans from the Philippines, and 5,000 Japanese recruits from Nagasaki. Jesuits, valued for their knowledge of the region, could assist with the expedition. They would also carry a fund of 200,000 pesos to strategically bribe Chinese locals and hire mercenaries. The campaign was to be executed from two directions: the Castilians invading through Fujian, while the Portuguese advanced through Guangdong via Macau. Jesuit priests would serve as consultants and negotiators with Chinese authorities, ensuring that the conquest prevented unnecessary violence and abuse of civilians, a theory defended by part of the Spanish church at the time. Once China was brought under Spanish control, the plan called for its systematic Christianization through the establishment of encomiendas, essentially noble estates, and Christian institutions such as hospitals, universities, and monasteries. This effort would be supported by a policy of mestizaje, encouraging intermarriage between Iberian conquistadors and Chinese women. A successful conquest would mark a monumental expansion of the Hispanic global monarchy, transforming China into a vital base for Spanish influence across Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean, just like we saw on the third phase of the plan. From there, Spanish forces could move to conquer and Christianize Indochina, Siam, Kampuchea, India, Borneo, Sumatra, the Moluccas, and other regions, potentially rallying local allies against the Ottoman Empire. In 1587, preparations for the invasion started taking place in Manila. They started building stockpiles of supplies, weapons, ships. Soldiers were being organized to move into the invasion. That same year, coincidentally, a Japanese delegation from Hirado, led by Konishi Yukinaga, a Japanese Christian and admiral, who we can see in this painting, arrived in Manila and offered 6,000 soldiers and pledged all the people and soldiers that Spain asked to join any campaign against China. Everything seemed ready at this time, and most surprisingly, it kind of seemed like they could do it. When we take a closer look, it was a viable plan with moderate goals, at least at the start, and a step-by-step set of objectives. So why didn't it happen? Oddly enough, the Catholic Church, even though one of the main goals here was the conversion of millions of Chinese people to Christianity. Part of the church, and even part of the Jesuits, saw this plan of invading China as an unjustified use of violence against non-Christians. Portuguese Jesuits were particularly not on board, as they didn't want to jeopardize their existing relationship with China over Spain's ambition. At the same time, other religious orders protested to the king, the Dominicans and the Franciscans, stating that they had their own projects to convert China peacefully, and this attempted conquest would make it impossible. Ultimately, with so many obstacles and objections, the interest of the Spanish king faded away, and so the project was archived. The new governor of the Philippines was once again given strict instructions not to enter a conflict with China and instead seek a policy of appeasement and friendship with the Ming. By 1640, Portugal also regained its independence, and so a key element in the Spanish plan was removed. Some others tried to revive the idea in the coming decades, even once replacing China with Japan as the target of the invasion, but never successfully. And so the crazy Spanish plan to invade China, which actually seemed to not have been that crazy after all, was abandoned and never came to be. And it's crazy to think that this was a real possibility. I mean, how different would the world be if they had tried, and most of all, if they had succeeded? China ended up never being directly colonized by the Europeans. Only Hong Kong and Macau, plus some other local city and port concessions, and maybe this is a sign that the Spanish would have been ultimately unsuccessful. I mean, if the British didn't invade it, and they invaded everyone at the time, there must have been a good reason not to. I actually made a video a few years ago about these other European outposts that are essentially colonies within China. I'll link it somewhere here so you can check it out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge.